I'm Mark Gagan, and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise-scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. Today's episode is unique because my guest is pretty unique. Gabriel Holschneider was working as a lawyer 20 years ago when he uncovered a passion for and an obsession with captive insurance and started a consultancy and a very small reinsurer with his own money. Then 10 years ago he founded an MGA group called Access Global. In 2026, that group is the biggest MGA in Latin America, is fully globalizing, and is set to write over $1 billion in gross premiums, often from hard-to-reach locations or via niche classes that others find difficult to underwrite. Gabe is a remarkable personality and is building something that is clearly out of the ordinary. I've interviewed lots of people behind fast-growing MGA groups, but none of them quite like this, and that's partly because this is a business that wasn't born out of the traditional Anglo-US axis, where so many of its peers are to be found. It's refreshing and different. So, listen on as Gabe explains the rationale behind the group, the main differentiation points in its modus operandi, and where he expects the venture to be heading in the coming years. It's a breath of fresh air, and I can highly recommend a listen. Enjoy the podcast. Gabe, welcome to the Voice of Insurance.
Mark, thanks for having us all these years. We've known each other. It's a privilege to be on your show.
Yeah, I can't believe, yes, I last met you probably about 10 years ago, which is a wake-up call to me that I probably should have got down to Miami at some point, especially this time of year. It's crazy not to.
We should all be in Miami this time of year.
It's wonderful. I'm not sure I want to be in Miami in the middle of July or just when the hurricane's about to come.
It doesn't seem like July, right? Snow is pouring down everywhere except essentially Miami. But it's great to be on your show. Thanks for having us, man.
For anyone who's listening out there who doesn't know you, Gabe, give us a bit of a rundown of your career to date and introduce yourself, and start by telling us how you got into insurance.
Well, that's the classic we all ask each other, right? By accident, like probably 99% of the answer. So I'm an attorney by trade. I worked at a law firm. We were doing really interesting international litigation and investor state disputes and things of that nature.
And where was that?
This was a long time ago in Mexico City. It was an international law firm focused on the virtues of the North America Free Trade Agreement.
You could have stayed in that. You'd be so busy. You'd never have looked back.
I would be busy. The partner who still runs that firm today is extremely busy today.
Yeah.
But I was at that firm and the clients were parading through every day, telling us all their tricks to come out on top commercially and to be audacious in competition. And we were supposed to defend them in antitrust cases and things of that nature. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'd rather be causing problems for lawyers on the other side of this equation. I want to hire them instead of me just billing my hours. And I came across the word captive insurance back then. This must have been 20 years ago. I said, well, what's that? Well, it's really complicated. There's not many of these around here in Latin America, but it's a private insurance company. And I became obsessed with it. I became obsessed with it, with learning the virtues of self-insurance, and obsessed with teaching and walking with businessmen, really sophisticated businessmen, who, quite frankly, know their risk better than any underwriter sitting thousands of miles away. So I got into insurance because of the virtues of self-insurance and captives originally.
And was that trying to implement that in Central America and Latin America?
Correct. You know, it was an untapped marketplace. The broking community was not speaking about captives to their clients for numerous reasons. And there was no legislation, no framework around it. And as an attorney and with a consulting mindset, I thought it was a great opportunity to build long-lasting relationships with businessmen who ultimately are the ultimate risk bearers. So real opportunity in bridging the gap between reinsurance and the risk-bearing entities that drive.
So is that the sort of origins of the Rainmaker Group?
That's right. That's where Rainmaker got started, setting up and creating captives for large multinational organizations. And shortly thereafter, some maybe now 16, 17 years ago, I said, you know what? We kind of need a reinsurance company to come full circle with this for several reasons. For captives, we needed partners that would eventually want to front for our captive clients. Secondly, we are risk-bearing mindset guys. When we made a recommendation to a client about a specific piece of his risk, we wanted to back that recommendation with our money. So after some research, we decided to create our own reinsurance company. And all we had was $250,000. So that was the minimum capital required to get a reinsurance license. And
wow.
After getting laughed at quite a bit, so you're going to build a reinsurer with $250K, that's funny. And they were right to laugh.
Yeah, Lloyd's in 1971, that wouldn't be that bad.
Exactly. But that became our second venture, Eureka Re. And fast forward to today, 17 years later, we've reinvested every single dollar, and we're scratching some $80 million in capital. We've got 3 A- ratings. We're up and running in 17 countries. And it's been a build. The Rainmaker Group is a company of builders. We haven't made any fancy acquisitions. We're not savvy like that. We're just stick to our knitting's builders of companies in the insurance space.
So when did you start building XS Global, which I think was the reason why we're here? Obviously, it's important to know how it fits in with everything else, because sometimes that can be quite complicated, but it's good that you've already started at the beginning. I think it makes a lot of sense. So when was that?
So XS Global came about in 2016. A colleague of mine that you may know, Steve Jackson, and I, our business had grown. Our captive business was doing very well in Latin America. The reinsurer, Eureka Re, was also blossoming and growing. And I always knew that I wanted to use Eureka Re like an incubator of insurance opportunities. And I knew it was going to be a slow burn for that company. It's funny because these days everybody talks about how attractive recurring revenue businesses like MGUs are and how capital intensive businesses carry less value. Well, I've never seen it that way. For me, capital intensive businesses are amazing, especially if you own the capital and you get to invest it.
And if you get to compound it in the kind of Warren Buffett style over many years.
They already laid the playbook out for us, right?
It gets big.
Right. So we always knew that Eureka needed to be that incubator engine for our other insurance initiatives. And similarly to the captives, 20 years later, building the captive engine, we're the largest captive manager in the region. We were at the forefront of this. We were very disruptive. And so when the MGU opportunity arose in 2016, Steve said, Gabe, I know there's such an industry in the MGU space. The hard market was looming. And Steve really provoked me to think about building the first significant Latin American-based MGU. And that's how XS Global came into existence.
So you'd always thought of using Eureka Re's capital and its licenses. So we should always think of you as being one of the original sort of hybrid carrier ideas.
Well, I'm glad you're saying that, because there's people out there that are...
I don't know if, but once something becomes a thing, then people either they want to be associated with it and they put the word hybrid in everything, or they want to have nothing to do with it. So don't you dare call me a hybrid.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because there are some serious players in the space out there that are way smarter than we are, way richer than we are, and that have been successful in having a capital tower.
That really emerged in the last, let's say, since 2020. So you were 3 or 4 years ahead. So just slightly different.
And rubbing two nickels together, which is how I like to build businesses. So there is a symbiotic relationship among our captive insurance unit, our reinsurance company, and of course, our MGU. And it dawned on us that there was a plethora of MGUs in the sophisticated and more mature insurance markets. But there weren't that many in what we like to call the hard places, in the international marketplaces. Of course, we already cut our teeth entrepreneuring and bringing captives in a disruptive way to territories and jurisdictions where it wasn't heard of. So we didn't shy away from that challenge. And it dawned on us that we had the opportunity to be first movers in the MGU space in what we call the difficult places. We weren't going to attempt to compete in Chicago or in Minneapolis and to do the next great US-based, and which we wouldn't get anywhere. But there were other places that we knew we could be more effective. And that's what we've set out to do. And that's what we've done over the last 8 years.
And what sort of scale have you got up to now?
So we've grown double digit, north of 22% year on year compounding since we founded the business. We closed out this year close to $700 million of gross written premium, but we don't really care about the gross written premium. It's never been about the gross written premium. At the heart and soul of this venture is writing for profit, because it's all the money we ever owned is in it. All the underwriters are my partners and are invested in the enterprise. And there's a lot of MGUs out there and more to come, but I believe that there's going to be a lot of pruning and weaning in this space, and which I think is a good thing. And there's only one mantra for the MGA of the future, and it is you got to respect your capacity providers as the most important piece of the equation. I always tell my boys that it's like managing your grandma's retirement money. And she says, honey, I have this that your grandfather left. Where can I invest it? That's how serious we take reinsurers' money around here. And the fact that our money's in on everything we write. So if anybody's going to get hurt, it's going to be us in the first place.
That's a good analogy, isn't it? That heavy responsibility, thinking, right, I do not want to lose any of this money. I don't want to be the one in my family who blew.
Well, certainly we're here to pay claims, and we've done that. We've done our fair share of that. But we're not shy to walk away from a segment or a sector or a line that is struggling. We're not shy to do that. We're not shy to pivot. We're agile. But it's been a long climb, Mark. It wasn't easy. The reason Eureka was relevant also is because nobody else would pick up the phone and help us.
I mean, having the A- paper is pretty useful.
Yeah, it's getting better. It's getting better. And we never designed Eureka to be the next hyper important reinsurer. Not at all. Eureka is designed to cater exclusively to us and to show our capacity providers that we have alignment to them. We're not there to replace them ever.
So we'll never get to a point where, yes, they start to worry that you're competing with them.
No. It's not the model. Actually, we want to work with capacity providers that will invite Eureka to participate on things that they believe is healthy business.
Oh, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Right.
Have a bit of reciprocal arrangements.
Right.
Yeah, very, very nice. And how many people and offices have you got up to, and where are they?
So we're operating now in 11 countries. Last checked, our headcount was at 188 individuals. We're scattered across Europe, Asia, Middle East, Latin America, and the US. Off the top of my head, of course, we have our London operation. We set up an operation in Madrid and in Paris. From that, we cover a lot of our European opportunities. We have the office in Dubai that's doing very well, from which we're covering Middle East and Africa. We opened shop in Hong Kong. It was under design, and we will have a support office in Singapore as well by the end of this year. It took us a year and change to set that up adequately, to build the right team and the right individuals and muster the right capacity around it. And that's off to the races this year. We've, of course, got a hub in Miami, a small shop in New York, and a couple of spots in Latin America. In Mexico City, of course, an important part of our operations center sits there.
So you're in lots of places. When you say difficult business, what do you mean? Do you mean difficult to access business, or business that's difficult to underwrite, or a bit of both?
Well, it's definitely difficult to access. The good thing about Access Global is that I sleep fairly well on the underwriting side of things, because we have made it a cultural purpose of the firm that all our lead underwriters are uber senior guys that have been around the block more than once, that have seen their fair share of bloodshed, and that are eager to pivot in their career into an entrepreneurial role as underwriters. And now they're doing it for the livelihood of themselves and their families and the equity that they possess in the firm. So the first layer of defense on healthy underwriting is the stellar team of guys we've assembled. Like I said, all of them with international experience and with already very successful underwriting careers. Now, the access bit of your question, we've had a lot of fun with that, because the original mission, bring reinsurance paper to bear as directly as possible to these hard to reach places, that's exactly what we set out to do. And there's a lot of formulaic / regulatory / compliance mechanisms we've had to implement to just bring that reinsurance paper to bear as locally as possible in the hands of the local markets. And that access to those local opportunities is something that has served us right, because it just frees up more value in the chain for us to be able to deliver profit to the capacity providers.
And in terms of classes of business, if I asked a broker, what do Access Global do? And they say, oh, they're really good at this, or I know them for this, right, financial institutions, or whatever it is. Is there a particular class of business or classes of business you'd like them to say? Or is it you do almost everything? So
we write 16 lines of business. And a lot of it is specialty business that is very bespoke and that has a very focused intent. For example, our constructors, plant and equipment book must be, if not the largest, the second largest portfolio of CPE business out there. And that is extremely niche. And we have a phenomenal lead underwriting partner that's been building that business, who's assembled a great team. And we're writing that globally from a central figure. But in the heart of the hard market, we did very, very well for our capacity providers with substantial primary property displacements, right? So we were opportunistic at that point, and we built a sizable complex FAC property book that we still sit on today on many of these jurisdictions where we're at. We also have been conscientious of not only feeding lines that will ultimately put us in a natural catastrophe bucket. And so we've been building an A&H practice that I'm very proud of, that is growing substantially, personal lines. We've got a very strong parametrics unit that is always innovating with product that is complementary to the other lines we're writing. We're probably one of the few international MGUs that has a strong treaty underwriting practice, because the reinsurers can do that directly. We've managed with Eureka and other smaller less known reinsurers built a following for treaty business that's been performing very well.
It's not what you normally associate with the managing general underwriter.
That's right. So we've got a little bit of everything, but especially things that we have a craft in, that we're passionate in, that we have the right underwriting partner at the helm of, and that we know can make an impact in that specific market.
So maybe if you were interviewing someone and you've got your 16 lines of business and they turned out to be an expert in the 17th, it doesn't sound like that would surprise you.
No, it's not an impediment at all.
Wow, no, this is great.
It's
because
not
that's
an
going to
impediment. We're in a really cool discussion now to open up a cyber opportunity with a very robust cyber underwriting partner. Our doors are always open to new opportunities.
And I don't know if you can say this, but what sort of numbers are you expecting or budgeting for 26?
We'll be comfortably at $1 billion or above. On the organic growth schedule we have set out for 26, it puts us at some 880 million. And I got a couple of tricks up my sleeve that I've been keeping from the teams that we're already executing on. But like I said, truly the top line does not matter. Writing top line is so easy. Any sucker can do that, especially now that things are getting choppy.
Yeah.
We're sharing with you how we take pride in the fact that our team, it's not that big of a team at this point, but that it is really a dichotomy of ultra senior guys, 30 plus, 40 years experience in the industry, and very young, aggressive, ambitious, younger team members. And we're coupling them. We're putting them to work in synchronicity. So it's all about the quality of the business we bring our capacity providers.
Where are you seeing the best growth prospects at the moment, either geographically or by line or both?
So from a geographic perspective, we are by far the largest MGU in Latin America by tenfold. We probably did some north of 220 million of premium in Latin America. And that is a third of the company. The rest is scattered around the other geographies. I have big expectations for our push into Asia, led by an underwriting partner and regional CEO of ours, Stephen Barnett. Spent a long time at AIG, ended up also being CEO for them at the Asian region. And I always tell Stephen, Asia is going to be half our company. Asia is going to be half the business. And I know it is. And we're going to get it right. We're going to take our time and we're going to get it right. We're already first movers, if you will, MGU for the region. Stephen's assembled an amazing team, very experienced guys and gals that are driving that remit. So I expect a lot of growth from our Asian unit. I expect a lot of continued growth into the African marketplace, where we're already active and present with some strong partnerships that have blossomed over the last 3-4 years there. We're so small and insignificant, Mark. The world's our oyster. Plenty of room.
So there's plenty of room to grow, of course. But yeah, when you're under $1 billion, coming to $1 billion, there are trillions of premium in the world to look at. So
I tell my teams all day long, we are insignificant, guys. We're a small dog in a big dog fight. So big attitude, big dog attitude, but we know our place.
And in terms of that pitch to the talent, 30 years ago, there weren't quite so many MGAs, there were nowhere near as many MGAs and career opportunities at MGAs, in the way that now there is a very clear career path for an underwriter to choose if they so wish, if they're the right type of character to do that. They've got lots of places they could look at. So how do you differentiate yourself in a world that's got a lot more MGAs than it ever used to have? And so therefore they do have a choice.
Well, first off, more than luring them or convincing them, it's really that we get convinced that those individuals fit our culture. Because a lot of people can play around with building an enterprise, or for that matter, an MGU, but very few really do know what it takes to entrepreneur. And I like what Elon Musk says. He says entrepreneuring is like chewing glass and looking at the horizon. And so a lot of people think they're entrepreneurs. And until they kind of have to make ends meet, and I didn't know payroll meant that, and we actually need to pay our taxes on time. And so it's important for underwriters, very senior underwriters that have a craft, to be able to exclusively continue to focus on that craft. And therefore, the way we approach this is we want them to have that entrepreneurial spirit, but it's way more important for us that they have entrepreneurial underwriting wherewithal. We mostly serve like a family office to them, where we take care of the rest.
You've got to get that Eureka license in that territory where they want to write. And without that, you're going to have to get that local license, that intermediary's license.
Not only sorting capacity for them, but also sorting the day-to-day.
And you've got to do a return every 6 months, and there might be an inspection. Yes, It just brings me out in a cold sweat just thinking about the amount of admin that there is when you're in that many territories.
It's tremendous. And the enterprise doesn't really carry any value unless that thankless behind the scenes work is put in.
I suppose a platform, if it's efficient and it's got access to everywhere you need to have that, of course it has value.
So that's exactly what we've set out to build. And that's what we define ourselves as, a direct and indirect insurance platform. And in some jurisdictions where we've been around longer, it's, quote, more efficient. And in others where we're entrepreneuring and it's the early days, it's clunky. And that's why nobody does it, because it's hard, right? And it's okay. Hard is okay for us. We don't shy away from it. So on the culture side of the underwriting, and to your question about the future for underwriting, I've always believed that traditional balance sheet appreciation, not to say remuneration, of uber talented underwriters is underweight. I've been quoted more than once that the craft of underwriting looks more like working at a law firm or at a consulting firm like Accenture than at a corporate shop. Because still today, despite AI doing its best to take over a lot of things, and it will take over everything eventually, still today, the ethos of the underwriter drives tremendous value. And a lot of the carriers, the traditional risk-bearing carriers, don't have the ability, even if they know it, and they don't have the corporate ability to respond to that. MGUs provide a fantastic platform for those gifted, talented underwriters to participate in a more meaningful way.
But it sounds like you want them to buy into you. So there are different flavors of a platform, one where they might create their own little unit and it might have its own brand name and its logo and its own little website and, you know, different colors and all that kind of stuff. And something that they could say, well, this is my little thing. This sounds like you've got a different philosophy. You want them to buy into Access Global. There's one Access Global. There's this platform and you want to join because...
So thus far, we have, quote, absorbed smaller MGUs that saw the benefit of forfeiting control, shareholding control of their unit in exchange for being a minority investor in something that is way larger and that carries more enterprise value, way better multiples, access to capacity. So up until now, all our growth has been, like I said, built organically. We've had some, as I would call them, absorptions. I'm not opposed to the fact if there's something that makes sense that has a brand identity with a certain market in a certain place, I have no issue in fostering that as part of the value. So far, it's kind of served all the stakeholders at the table today to be under one brand, one flag, and it's certainly served them from a valuation perspective.
What works best is what's best, right?
That's right.
But never to be too wedded to one idea or another. Obviously, that global network that you've built is genuinely global. The sun is shining somewhere in one of your offices at any given time of day or night, wherever you are. Why are you doing it that way? What's the real rationale for being a global MGU?
Well,
particularly when you could say, hey, well, we're way the biggest one in Latin America. We can be known for that. You know, we can be the gateway to Latin America.
That's been achieved. Yeah. And I believe in life, you know, a mentor and a friend of mine, you know, always says, what's next? What's next? What's next? Right? How can you push the envelope? And remember what I shared earlier is all about a specific skill set we have that we're very good at. And that skill set came with my consulting and entrepreneurial background, how we built the captive unit in markets that captives were unheard of, what the resistances we met were, how we overcame them. It's the same thing for a lot of these territories where we're, quote, MGUing it. It's still novice. And therefore, for a lot of the big boys, it's still scary. And the big boys have plenty of things to do, and they're getting their fair share of action in the traditional, more mature markets. So for us, A, we're good at it. B, we know we can deliver it. And C, it's a very attractive asset. We know that we're building a valuable asset. This is not unbeknownst to us. And so we're being very intentional of the geographies we have chosen to entrepreneur into. And we're comfortable bearing that risk and pushing the limits there. So if the United States was a third world economy, we'd be there right now doing MGUs, right? But it's not. So we're going to all these geographies where we know the evolution of the insurance industry will warrant the presence of MGUs.
And you get the growth built in as long as everything goes well in that economy. They have above average growth rates.
We know what we're building. And we know that that is very appealing to a certain crowd of guys.
And is there anywhere you wouldn't go?
Well, of course, we come nowhere near all the sanctioned areas.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think we've got our homework cut out for us. I mean, our presence in Hong Kong Asia is a big place, as you well know. So it's not like we're here. No, we're very specific. We have a specific plan for Taiwan. We have a specific plan in place for South Korea. So we're using Hong Kong and eventually Singapore as a regional hub. But even within the whole of Asia, we have very specific product country objectives.
And it sounds like also you're not wielding some massive line sizes here.
No.
It's quite a high frequency of quite small premiums.
Not at this point. And on some of the book that has matured nicely and that's performed well, we're beginning now to broaden our lines by adding additional capacity providers and pulverizing the exposure.
Yeah.
So again, remember, all of my life savings are on the line on this. And my underwriting partners are invested with me in that journey with us. So that means all their life savings are invested in this as well. So we're not going to go out and put down things that we're going to regret.
What about the market? You mentioned the market's getting choppier. This time of year, I do all the reinsurance renewal podcasts, and you ask the average reinsurer, they say, wow, looks like we gave up 2 years worth of softening in one go, which has surprised some people.
Well, last year especially was still one of the best market years ever, right? I mean, you want to rewind the tape, take us back.
No one really does, no.
Right? So these are still strong years to be in, right? It's just we become complacent and we kind of forget where this all could end up, right? So these are still, especially in the property market, we've seen severe adjustments. You know, it kind of corrected way faster than we expected. But that's okay. Doesn't matter. And if we write less property business, that's fine. We're not going to chase ourselves down into a rabbit hole. So it's been tougher for some of the property business, the cat exposed business. But you'd be surprised on the quota share business, it's holding. It's holding, and you got to stay relevant. You got to be creative to your client, whether it's the broker or direct. You got to stay relevant by offering alternative solutions, thus our parametric unit. So our teams always try to bring encompassing solutions to the table that will keep us relevant as possible as the market continues to adjust. World's never been riskier. We're giving out Nobel Peace Prizes and ending wars, but it feels like it's never been riskier. So I believe we could still see further correction, maybe in property this year a little bit. Why not? Yep. There's still adequacy. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just got to get smart and you got to know where to draw your line.
And give that good service so you're still a preferred supplier.
This is where our captives fit in nicely. With a lot of the captive clients, we know we can have long-term relationships because we've been catering to them for years. So this is where really building the partnership with the ultimate client, and we do quite a bit of reinsurance into those captives.
Well, again, that's a very loyal customer base, I presume, because there's a lot of service.
Correct.
The big picture, I mean, I know you're a big thinker about the insurance sector in general. What's your view on what's been behind this big growth in MGAs? Obviously, we had big growth in MGAs in the 2010s, and then we had a bit of a small amount of thinning out. There was that difficult, hard market where some people couldn't renew their paper, and that's just an unfortunate fact of life. But most other people did. And then we've kicked on from there hugely.
Yeah.
What's behind it? It looks like a permanent change in the way we're doing things.
Well, I mean, a lot of it, I believe, is driven by the investment firms and even rewinding further back. Like you've seen, for example, what Apollo did with Athena, right? These huge investment houses are like, how do I get closer to managing float?
Yeah.
How can I play Mr. Buffett's game, right? And so that's sparked further interest in the insurance industry as a whole. And then you get the PE firms involved, and this recurring revenue model is just so appealing to them. But don't lose sight of the fact that a lot of the MGUs, including us that have been bred recently, I mean, we're still a young company at, 9 years old, right? We really have been riding the wave of a phenomenal market. And that does not sit lightly with us. Between the virtues of the hard market, the interest from M&A and PE firms in the space, that really detonated a fad about, anyone can do an MGA, right? In some cases, you kind of can. And there's a plethora of those. But if you want to build an enterprise that has sustained value, that will be around to tell the test of time, to honor the capacity providers in a meaningful long-term way, you need way more than a hard market and a savvy underwriter and a buddy of his that gives him the pen. You need a lot more than that. And that's what we're attempting to do. We're attempting to bring a platform solution that is scalable in these hard-to-reach places, that has a track record for honoring other people's money. So MGA is not an MGA is not an MGA.
I mean, always one of my pet theories is that what's different now from 30 years ago, of course, is that the technology is there to create yourself a virtual insurance company. You can behave exactly like an insurance company with the same software, or often better software because you're newer than they are, so that you don't have all the green screen stuff in the basement. You could go out and buy the best solutions available today, install them and be using them today. You can be best practice underwriter today quickly and effectively isolate. We have a value chain where there's capital, there's underwriting. Now that somebody like you can isolate that skill in underwriting and remunerate and extract the economic value from underwriting, because you can measure it. You can prove that you're a good underwriter.
You can.
But also without adding a huge amount of extra friction, that it costs the same or slightly less to do it that way.
So you can do all of that.
It was before you would always add another 10 points at
Right.
the very least, and there's nothing you could do about that. You had to be 10 points better on the loss ratio because otherwise you were nowhere.
I get it.
And now you don't have to do that because you're not adding 10 extra points, because everyone's better at measuring exactly where their cost is and where their value is.
I totally see that. And you're absolutely right on the construct of that phenomenon. And you can do that, for lack of a better word, get away with it, up until the day that the capacity provider says, you know what, I'm not renewing this contract. So it all comes back to your grandma's money.
There's not always any logic to it. So this has been perfectly profitable for the last 20 years, and now they just woke up one day and said they don't want to do it anymore.
Could be, or they were merged, or they were spun off. Typically, if they have been consistently making money, I have a soft spot for balance sheet businesses, as I already mentioned to you. When we've seen some correction in pricing of balance sheet businesses, and so the way we approach that is extreme long-term relationships. I'm happy to leave more upfront commission money on the table as the MGU if I get remunerated on the proofs in the pudding of the underwriting we actually did. And those are the MGUs that I believe will thrive and survive, right? We are seeing new capital structures being set up as well, right? And it's all these sidecar opportunities and hedge funds that are coming into the space. But it's not that black and white. I mean, an MGA is not an MGA. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, so again, you've kind of explained this already, I think. That ultimate vulnerability of being an MGA, a pure MGA, is that you can just get left high and dry, sometimes just through no fault of your own, particularly if you're very monoline and very specific and very niche. Again, so that's why the Eureka Re is there.
Or if you're greedy and you say, this commission's delicious, why don't you just keep writing this premium? Which is a huge part of why MGAs go under quickly and get abandoned, because there's a greed factor tied to the underwriter saying, wow, look at this juicy construct I have. And that's an irresponsible. And somebody else will deal with that. And if I lose the pen, 3 years from now, nobody will care. I've made my money. Mm-hmm. There is that out there, and it happens. And so, this is a long-term game. It's not a commission game. It is not a commission game.
Although, you need the commission.
It's loaded with commission, but you got to treat it as capital, see? And you got to have an understanding and a philosophy that it's capital.
We're sitting in London. What about Lloyd's? Certainly for groups, when they get to your sort of scale, and again with your level of expertise, with managing your own capital, that kind of culture that you've got, it sounds like we're talking about another global platform. Do you think it could be something that's attractive?
We definitely have interest in staying and becoming closer to Lloyd's and building on additional features within Lloyd's from our three entities, from our captive insurance unit, from our reinsurance company, and of course from the MGU side. In many ways, not that it never ever left, but I feel like Lloyd's is back in so many ways, It's exciting. And having built an international MGU from scratch, I can say how truly powerful, and everybody says it, I just don't know if everybody appreciates it, how truly powerful the licensing framework that Lloyd's awards is. It's something to be cherished, right?
Because you know exactly how hard it is to do your own.
So otherwise, guys like us wouldn't be out there, right, doing it on our own, right? So we certainly have plans for Lloyd's, like I said, through Eureka. And we already have Lloyd's cover holder status on several of our MGU units, and that will continue to enhance and evolve. But Lloyd's is going to play an ever more important part in our future for sure.
As you get more global, I suppose it makes more and more sense. You have more affinity with each other.
Correct.
As you get global, this is a real CEO question. How do you keep that culture? How do you unify? How do you have a common denominator that keeps you all excess global people?
Well, you have to put in the legwork. And by legwork, I mean whether it's sitting through the meetings and getting on the plane and getting out there. But the first step is that I speak to every single person that joins this firm, and I lay out very clearly what are the fundamental pillars of our culture. And at the heart of it you'd be surprised to see how many of those things you learned in kindergarten or you learned because your mom told you. This is not hard to do, right?
So well, be nice to other people.
Just be kind, right? Be kind to people. You're spending all this day together in the office with individuals. Take time to know them. Take time to know what hurts, take time to understand why maybe they're late or why they're late on their plan. Go the extra mile, right? To be connected to the individuals you're spending time with, number one. Number two, we're not here for a long time. We're here for an effective time. So be effective with your time and be impeccable with your word. Just the stuff, honestly, you learned from your mom, right?
And don't steal anybody's toys.
Exactly. Don't take what's not yours. I mean, the very basic things. Own it. I spend a lot of time, sharing with my peers the things that I've done terribly wrong because I'm a person too, and that's okay. So always spread the good decisions and the good outcomes, push them down into the teams, and all the terrible stuff that goes wrong, own them and take them upstairs. That's my job, right? I love to get bad news. That's what I tell my managers. Like, I love it when you call me and you have a problem and you don't know what to do. That's the calls I want to get.
Because that's your job, yes.
That's my job, right? And I know it's my job, and that's why I go to therapy. And I'm ready for it, right? There's a lot of components about it, but it's just really having a strict no a-hole policy is really important. We don't want any rotten apples in the mix.
It can be really toxic, I think. Not everybody. I mean, maybe you're lucky enough never to work in a place, but most people listening have worked somewhere at one point in their lives when somebody was toxic.
Yeah.
And it's so painful. It makes life really difficult.
I've removed individuals like that from my life, and it's addition by subtraction, right? So no narcissism allowed. We're a partnership. I mean, a fundamental part of this MGU is that we are a partnership model. And don't take my word for it, but according to some external advisors, he believes, and he's traded hundreds of these entities over the course of his career, and he's never seen a more generous partnership model than ours from an economic standpoint. That was out of design from the get-go, right? So there are obligations that come with that amount of generosity for our underwriting partners.
Yeah.
And you've had partners in the past, and when they're down and out, you don't say, well, tough luck, he's having a bad day. You reach out, hey, what's going on, my man? So there's a lot of that, and that helps because I'm not the one carrying the culture entirely. I really rely on my other partners to be ambassadors of that.
Within the Rainmaker Group, you've got software businesses and software interests.
Yeah.
Again, so is that another part of the design, is to be better technologically than others?
So, I mean, from a very small scale perspective of things, we've tried to mimic some of the things that we've seen the likes of Mr. Buffett do by taking on investment in ancillary industries where it makes sense with the float from our small reinsurance company and with some of our personal assets. So we've made some investments in technology and in healthcare outside of the traditional three businesses we described. And some of them have done extremely well and some of them haven't. We're clearly not as good as his outfit, but we're getting better. So yes, we do invest in technology through a couple of funds that we're engaged in and some directly. And I believe it's at the epicenter of change in our industry. And so we want to try and stay as closely connected to that.
But you certainly wouldn't say the word InsurTech. It's not that kind of thing.
No, not at this point.
You're not a techie.
No, not smart enough.
You mentioned about AI earlier in the conversation, saying at some point it will take over everything, but not today. What are you using it for within your platform?
We use it for everything. I used it to set up my last holiday and for it to choose the right hotels and the right departure times and to tell me what restaurants I should eat in with what budgets.
How was it?
It was amazing. It was perfect. It was flawless. I used it to get an immediate opinion on a dispute that I had with someone where we had opposing views, and it gave me a pretty strong assessment of it instantaneously. We use it now, and specifically into the businesses, we use it a lot in claims analysis and claims reporting. We're doing very well with that. I'm very proud of our CTO. He's a young, bright kid out of the National Mathematics Institute. Well, he did mathematics, and he's also a biologist. And he runs a SWAT team of really young, talented guys in our Mexico City office that are building a phenomenal platform for our team that eventually will do pre-underwriting work for my underwriting partners. So I'm invested heavily in it. I use it as a board member, and I dump all our financial information and say, your role to me is a board member role, and I want you to be uber critical of all the things I'm doing wrong. What do you see in my financials? And you'd be surprised how accurate it is.
Oh, that's good. And what about things like ingesting the kind of standard tasks that people would say, get a complicated underwriting submission? with schedule of values and all that kind of stuff, or to read 150 inspection reports, that kind of stuff.
That's already, it's doing that for us on the platform. And like I said, our CTO is hopefully at the end of this year, we'll be releasing a module that will be doing pre-underwriting work for our boys. So it'll be like, you'll get a prompt a month out. It'll have already done the analysis of what the economy is like in that sector. There have been any trends in catastrophic events that affect that risk. What's the stock price of the company? It's very basic things that an underwriter kind of takes into consideration, right? Except they kind of have to roll up their sleeves and Google it. Now it's going to do some of that basic knowledge and construct. And then it's going to tell you way in advance, like, get on this case, right?
This is a green light. You should be on the phone to the broker early.
War broke out in the next door country or whatever, right? The kind of things you'd be, there's a water crisis, whatever, right?
I mean, they're all risk factors, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I was talking to someone, that still in homeowners, credit score is still the most important thing, for example. It's kind of basic, but then it was a surprise to me because I've only spent my whole life in the specialty insurance market and reinsurance market. I never think about a single homeowner. What makes one homeowner better than another?
I get it. We have to get involved with AI. And we have to use it as a tool or it will use us. And I do believe eventually it will be embedded in everything we do. I was speaking with a reinsurer that we have a long-time relationship with last week, and he said, Gabe, what still dawns on me is I keep doing the same work my grandfather and great-grandfather did. Like, our business isn't that complicated. It hasn't changed that much. And he's right. The fundamentals are still the fundamentals. So we'll see, but exciting to be engaged with AI. We don't claim to be a fintech of any sorts, but we certainly use it, and it's inexpensive to use.
Yes. What would be crazy is to have a tool in front of you and decide not to use it. That is crazy, I think. And to say, well, hang on a minute, someone invented a hammer and my job is putting nails in. It's like, well, hang on, I think I should probably try and use the hammer and, be worried about hitting my thumb a few times, but I will get more skill for that.
Think about the construct of the human mind and the human ego is like, we are so resistant to admit that we don't know a certain thing, or that it's hard for people to say in a meeting, I don't know. Now they can say it in the privacy of their own home to their best friend AI and say, I don't know, and actually have a forum to be a little bit better, right? So I challenge my teams all the time to go out there and use the tool and to be curious. Curiosity is everything in our business.
Well, that's the great thing about journalism, is that I can always say, I don't know. I mean, you're the expert. You see, I just have to ask questions and be curious.
Right.
So I've asked all my questions, actually, Gabe. And I was checking through the list and you already answered half of them with the first answer, actually. So you're going to come through a 10-year anniversary in the next 12 months.
That's right.
So,
we're excited.
Well, congratulations with
10,
that. Well, yeah. That's 10 for Access Global, but I don't know how many for Rainmaker.
20 for Rainmaker.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure that we book in another meeting.
I would love that.
When you're next in this part of the world, or maybe we should be somewhere else. I mean, we should be in Miami in February for the reinsurance.
Well, we'll have you when the snow gets complicated. But we'll see you in Monte Carlo for sure.
Absolutely. Really, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Likewise, my man.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this program. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry. The Voice of Insurance is produced in association with Advantage Go. Release your underwriters to underwrite with Advantage Go's underwriting platform. Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.